Wild Children of the Moors, a story based on Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, 1847. The September wind howled across the Yorkshire moors as Catherine Earnshaw pressed her face against the cold window pane of Wuthering Heights. At 15, she possessed a restless spirit that the confines of the dark farmhouse could barely contain. Her wild dark hair escaped its pins, and her eyes held the same untamed quality as the landscape beyond. "Cathy, get away from that window!" Hindley barked from his chair by the fire. At 21, her older brother had grown bitter since their father's death, taking every opportunity to assert his newfound authority over the household. Catherine ignored him, her gaze fixed on the figure moving across the moor. Heathcliff was returning from one of his long walks, his dark coat billowing behind him like the wings of some storm-born creature. Even at 17, he carried himself with a fierce pride that neither Hindley's cruelty nor the servants' whispers could diminish. "He'll catch his death out there," Ellen Dean muttered, bustling about with her evening chores. The housekeeper had watched these children grow from wild things into something even wilder, and she feared what the future might hold for them. "Heathcliff doesn't feel the cold like ordinary people," Catherine said, her breath fogging the glass. "He's like the moors themselves, eternal and unchanging." Hindley laughed harshly. "Eternal?" "He's nothing but a foundling, a piece of refuse our father dragged home from Liverpool." "Mark my words, sister, that devil will bring nothing but trouble to this house." Catherine whirled from the window, her eyes flashing with dangerous fire. "Don't you dare speak of him that way. Heathcliff has more nobility in his little finger than you have in your entire body." "Nobility? The boy has no name, no family, no prospects. What kind of future do you imagine with such a creature?" Before Catherine could answer, the kitchen door burst open, bringing with it a gust of cold air and the object of their dispute. Heathcliff stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his dark hair, his eyes immediately assessing the tension in the room. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice carrying the rough edge that years of Hindley's abuse had honed into a weapon. "Nothing that concerns you," Hindley sneered. "Though perhaps it's time you learned your place in this household. You may have bewitched my father with your pitiful orphan act, but things are different now." Heathcliff's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Catherine stepped between the two young men. "Enough, Hindley. Your jealousy grows more pathetic each day." "Jealousy?" Hindley's face flushed red. "Of him? I'm the master of Wuthering Heights now, not some nameless foundling." "You're master of nothing but your own bitter heart," Catherine shot back. "While you drink yourself into stupors and terrorise the servants, Heathcliff actually cares about this place, about the land, about you," Hindley finished, his smile turning cruel. "Yes, I've seen how he follows you about like a devoted dog. But what happens when you tire of playing with strays, Catherine? What happens when society comes calling with proper suitors?" A silence fell over the room, broken only by the wind rattling the windows. Catherine felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear, but recognition of a truth she wasn't ready to face. "Society means nothing to me," she said finally, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Heathcliff studied her face with the intensity that had always unnerved others. "Doesn't it?" he asked quietly. "Then why do you spend so much time at Thrushcross Grange? Why do you come home talking about Edgar Linton's books and Isabella's dresses?" Catherine's cheeks burned. "I can have friends beyond these walls, without it meaning anything." "Can you?" Heathcliff stepped closer and she could smell the Morse in him, wild herbs and rain and something indefinably free. "Because it seems to me you're already choosing between two worlds, Cathy. And I wonder which one you'll find more appealing when the time comes to decide." The challenge in his words hung in the air like smoke. Catherine felt the weight of it, the understanding that her childhood freedom to run wild across the moors with Heathcliff was ending, replaced by expectations and social conventions she had never questioned before. "I don't have to choose anything," she said. But even as the words left her lips, she knew they were false. The world was closing in around them, bringing with it rules and boundaries that would test every bond they had forged in their wild youth. Hindley watched this exchange with satisfaction, recognising the first cracks in the alliance that had always excluded him. "We'll see about that," he said softly. We'll see indeed. Outside, the storm intensified, and Ellen Dean shivered as she watched the three young people locked in their silent battle of wills. She had seen enough of life to recognize the moment when childhood ends and the more dangerous games of adulthood begin. The wild children of the moors were growing up, and she feared that their fierce love for each other would prove to be either their salvation or their destruction. As if sensing her thoughts, Catherine turned from the window one last time, her eyes meeting Heathcliff's across the room. In that look passed all the promise and peril of their shared future, a future that would test whether love born in freedom could survive the constraints of civilization.